They thought no one saw what they did to you. They thought the lies they told, the betrayal they orchestrated, the doors they closed in your face, they thought it all disappeared into silence. They moved on. They celebrated. They slept peacefully while you carried the weight of their cruelty in your chest like a stone. But here's what they didn't know. The moment they crossed you, they didn't just cross a person. They crossed a boundary in the spiritual realm that cannot be uncrossed. And right now, in this very moment, something has shifted. Not in your favor by coincidence, not by luck, by divine intervention. Because you are not who they thought you were. You are not random. You are not defenseless. You are chosen. And when the chosen are wronged, heaven does not stay silent. It moves. It records. It responds. And the response has already begun. You feel it, don't you? That strange quiet, that eerie calm. That's not emptiness. That's the sound of spiritual gears turning. That's justice preparing to speak. Let me tell you something most people will never understand about how the universe operates when it comes to the chosen. Divine intervention is not common. It is not given lightly. It is not triggered by every offense, every hardship, every disappointment that crosses your path. The universe does not rush to defend everyone who feels wronged. But there are moments, rare, specific, spiritually significant moments, when someone is targeted not because of what they did, but because of what they carry. When someone is attacked not for their flaws, but for their light. When betrayal is not personal, it's spiritual. When the enemy uses people as weapons to stop a destiny they cannot see but can sense. That's when heaven takes notice. That's when the Creator steps in. Because what was done to you wasn't just about you. It was an attempt to derail a calling, to crush an assignment, to silence a voice that was never meant to be silent. And when that happens, the scales of justice don't just tip, they slam down with the full weight of divine authority. The betrayal you experienced wasn't random. It was orchestrated, and so is the vindication coming for you. Think back to a moment recently, a moment when you had every right to lash out, when the rage was justified, when exposing them, cursing them, destroying their reputation would have felt so satisfying. You had the evidence, you had the platform, you had the support, but you didn't do it. Not because you were weak, not because you didn't care, but because something deeper inside, you said no. A still, quiet voice that whispered, "Let me handle this," and you obeyed. Even when your flesh screamed for revenge, even when your mind replayed the injustice over and over, even when people around you told you to fight back, to defend yourself, to make them pay, you chose restraint. You chose silence. You chose to trust a process you couldn't see. That decision, that silent, seemingly small decision, was not small. It was monumental. It was the moment you passed a test most people fail. It was the moment you proved you operate by a different code, a higher law, a spiritual standard that separates the chosen from the crowd. And that moment was seen. What you didn't know is that your silence was being watched, not just by heaven, but by the forces that work against it. Both sides were observing, waiting to see what you would do, because your response determined which door would open. If you had retaliated, you would have descended into their arena. You would have fought on their level, with their weapons, by their rules. And you would have lost spiritual authority in the process. But you didn't. You stayed still. You stayed covered. You stayed aligned. And in that moment, heaven marked you. The divine ledger recorded it. The angels took note. Your name was written in a book of those who chose God's way over their own way. And simultaneously, your enemies sealed their fate. Because when someone harms a chosen one who refuses to retaliate, they don't just offend you, they offend the one who chose you. And that is a debt they cannot escape. Let me paint the picture of what's been happening while you've been healing in silence. There was the coworker who sabotaged your project and took credit for your work. You said nothing. You kept working. There was the friend who spread lies about you to mutual connections, twisting your words, destroying your reputation in rooms you weren't even in. You didn't defend yourself. You let truth do its own work. There was the family member who mocked your faith, belittled your calling, made you feel small for believing in something greater. You didn't argue. You didn't try to convince them. You just kept walking. There was the partner who betrayed your trust, your love, your vulnerability, and walked away as if you meant nothing. You didn't beg. You didn't chase. You released them with grace. There was the leader who overlooked you, ignored your gifts, gave opportunities to others while you sat in the shadows. You didn't complain. You didn't grow bitter. You stayed faithful in the waiting. Every single one of these moments was a test, and you passed every single time. And now, the courtroom of heaven has convened. The evidence has been presented. The testimonies have been heard. The verdict is in, and it is final. What they did to you in secret is being exposed in public. What they stole from you in darkness is being restored in the light. What they thought they got away with is now catching up to them in ways they cannot control, cannot manipulate, cannot escape. Their peace is gone. Their sleep is troubled. Their schemes are unraveling. Their alliances are crumbling. The very thing they used against you is now turning against them. Not because you cursed them, not because you wished harm upon them, but because divine justice does not require your permission. It requires your obedience, and you obeyed. You stepped back, and heaven stepped in. The spiritual consequences are not coming. They are already here. You've seen the signs, the sudden fall from grace, the unexpected loss, the exposure they didn't see coming. That's not coincidence. That's correction. You need to understand who you are. You are not ordinary. You are not common. You are not just another person navigating life's challenges. You are marked. You carry something rare, a frequency that cannot be faked, an anointing that cannot be copied, a calling that cannot be transferred. The enemy knows this. That's why the attacks were so vicious. That's why the betrayal cut so deep. That's why it felt personal, because it was. But here's the truth. When you are chosen, you are also protected. Not protected from all pain, but protected in purpose. Not shielded from all battle, but covered in warfare. Not exempt from all loss, but guaranteed restoration. You have been seen by heaven. You have been recognized by the throne. And those who touch you touch the apple of God's eye. They didn't just wrong you. They declared war on your destiny, and they will not win. Now watch what happens. Doors that were closed are opening. Relationships that were toxic are ending. Opportunities that were blocked are flowing. People who doubted you are watching in silence. Those who betrayed you are wondering how you're still standing. Peace that makes no sense is flooding your spirit. Favor that you didn't apply for is showing up. Provision that you didn't plan for is manifesting. Clarity that you've been praying for is arriving. This is not luck. This is alignment. This is what happens when you pass the test. When you refuse to operate in flesh. When you trust the process, even when it hurts. You are entering a season of restoration. Everything the enemy stole, your joy, your confidence, your peace, your reputation, your opportunities, it's all being returned. Not in the same form. In greater measure. Pressed down. Shaken together. Running over. Because that's how God restores the faithful. If this message found you, it's not random. You are being reminded of who you are and what's happening around you right now. Stay alert, stay aligned. Do not go back to old patterns. Do not lower your standards. Do not settle for less than what heaven has prepared. The shift is real. The elevation is active. The protection is in place. Comment 777 if you receive this word. Subscribe if you're ready to walk in your authority. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. The chosen are rising. The faithful are being restored. And you are right on time.